remind people that it's going to be closed captioned on YouTube.
Good evening and welcome to Real Talk San Mateo episode 5. Thank you for joining us online. We all are aware that maybe a virtual meeting isn't always the best option for open and lively forums and conversations. Sorry about that. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're back. If this is your first time tuning in, we encourage you to look back at our previous episodes on YouTube. We've covered a variety of topics, discussed how individual groups are affected by issues, and how policing affects different groups in the community as a whole. Real Talk San Mateo has been wildly successful, and as your police department, we've grown from these conversations, and we thank you for taking time to sit with us. This month, we're talking about safety issues affecting students. The panelists will discuss this topic from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. and we'll have a half an hour open for community feedback and a Q&A session beginning at 7 and ending at 7:30. For tonight's meeting, we want to know how our department can help and improve the environment and circumstance for students who are experiencing safety issues at school. We will hear from our officers about training, responses, and experience on dealing with safety issues affecting students, as well as the perspectives of school administrators, teachers, and advocates. We're conscious of everyone's time and understand that this 90-minute conversation is just a tiny sample of a broader conversation that we must continue to have. This dialogue is not intended to come to any particular decision or consensus, but rather to hear a variety of perspectives and engage in genuine dialogue around this complicated topic. We've prepared some questions for our panelists based on questions we've received. If you would like to submit one, please do so using Zoom's Q&A option. Closed captioning will be provided on YouTube after the video is uploaded tonight. And for anyone watching this video in the future, feel free to send us an email with your questions or concerns. Always know that we're simply a phone call, email, or Zoom meeting away. We love our community, we love having these conversations, and we need to continue to keep doing it. Before we start with our introductions of our panelists, I'd like to toss the mic over to Chief Ed Barberini for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Allison. I appreciate it. Good evening, and thank you for joining our most recent episode of Real Talk. I'd like to thank everybody who's participating tonight, and taking some time out of their evening to talk about what we're seeing with our young folks. Thanks to Allison Gilmore, who's coordinating this and will serve as our facilitator tonight. She puts a lot of work into these episodes, so I appreciate everything that she's done. When we talk about subject matters for our discussions during these episodes, we kind of throw around a lot of ideas. And the reason we chose our young people tonight was, the timing with our kids returning to school in the traditional brick and mortar kind of traditional classroom setting, that, at the end of a traditional summer session, there are often adjustment periods that we observe and notice amongst kids. But in this case, it's been, in some cases 2 years before our young, or 2 years since our young folks have experienced that traditional classroom or school setting. So we're kind of interested to share information about what we're seeing as that return has taken place, what areas of concern may have arisen, what we can do not only as servants, whether it's the school district or with the city, but also maybe some advice to parents or family members or loved ones as they're having discussions at home and what observations we see or what's taking place in that school setting. So I'm excited about our conversation tonight. I get a lot out of these. I jump off and watch like everyone else and let those folks who are dealing with this on a daily basis have a healthy and always been very informative conversation that I take a lot away from. The folks that you're going to hear from tonight, a lot of communication happens on a daily basis where we share information, but that's not always apparent in a public setting. So this gives us an opportunity to have those conversations, but have them in a environment that allows us all to be exposed to what we're talking about, what we're seeing, and maybe some suggestions for what we can do about it. So thank you again to everybody participating tonight. Allison, thanks for your work in putting this together and running the show. So I'm going to jump off and to listen to what everyone has to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief Barberini, for your message. All right, we've solicited the expertise of our leaders in the community today, and we'd like to introduce you to our panel. Panelists, one at a time, can you tell us your name, the agency or the group that you represent, and 2 to 3 sentences about yourself and what you bring to the table this evening? We'll start with Lieutenant Kimber Joyce of the San Mateo Police Department.
Hi there. Thank you, Allison. Nice to see everybody, all these friendly faces. My name is Kimber Joyce. I'm a lieutenant here at the police department, currently serving as in overseeing our youth services unit. I've been with the police department for 18 years. Crazy, it's been that long, but time flies. But in my 18 years, I've done a variety of tasks, from patrol to detectives, to field training, to our street crimes team, to crisis negotiations. And I'm lucky enough, and I feel very, very fortunate to have the position that I have right now, being able to work in our community with our youth and our families in the youth services unit. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Joyce. Next, we have Sergeant Tracy Unga.
Thank you, Allison, and good evening, everybody. My name is Tracy Unga, and I have been a police officer now, recently promoted sergeant, since 2007. It's been 14 years. And as Lieutenant Joyce said, it goes by very quickly. I've had the honor and the privilege of serving the city of San Mateo as a police officer for all these years, and I've worked in several capacities, from patrol. I've worked very closely with all of our local schools in the district. I was fortunate to be the police activities lead executive director, and then recently promoted to the youth services unit sergeant. I love working with the youth in our community, and I'm excited to hear the dialogue and the conversations that we will have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Unga. Next, Officer Allison Adl.
Hi, I'm Allison Adl. I'm a youth services officer here at the San Mateo Police Department. I've been with San Mateo for 5 years. Since being here, I am currently a lead Explorer advisor, a therapy K-9 handler, and I'm also on our recruitment team. And I'm really passionate about working with youth and our families here in our San Mateo community.
Thanks, Officer Adl. Next up, Alex Greer.
Thanks, Allison. And I'm thrilled to be here. This is my first Real Talk panel that I've been on, and so I'm very happy to be here and to share what PAL's doing, especially at the school sites. And I actually am a Parks and Rec supervisor assigned to PAL, and I oversee the programming and the staff offered by PAL to our members. And I started with the city of San Mateo in 2016 as the coordinator over at the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Community Center. And I was there for about 2.5 years as a coordinator before being assigned to PAL in 2018. And so I've been a part of PAL since then, and I look forward to the work that we continue to do.
Thanks for that, Alex. Next up, we have Mr. Don Scatina.
Don Scatina, I'm the Director of Student Services for San Mateo Union High School District. I've been in this capacity for about 7 years. I'm also the principal of the College of San Mateo Middle College program, has about 200 students. In my role, I supervise attendance, supervise discipline, and also and do a lot of work with our mental health and counseling programs. been working in the district for 15 years. I spent 3 years at San Mateo High School as an assistant principal, 5 years at the continuation high school, Peninsula High School. That was formerly in San Bruno. That would have about the city of San Mateo. And more recently, the last 7 years as the director of the district, and appreciate being here.
Thank you, Mr. Scatena. Next up, Mr. Brett Stevenson.
Good evening. My name is Brett Stevenson. I'm the assistant principal at Hillsdale High School. I am born and raised in the community. I graduated from Hillsdale High School, started my teaching career at Abbott Middle School and Bowditch Middle School in the San Mateo Foster City School District, and then was fortunate to come back to Hillsdale as the Dean of Students in 2005. I've served as the boys varsity basketball coach, athletic director, and am now entering my 4th year as assistant principal. So San Mateo is definitely home for me.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Next up, we have Mr. Dennis Hills.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dennis Hills with the San Mateo Foster City School District, newly appointed Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. Prior to that, this is my 5th year in the district, but prior to that, I was in the role of Director of HR. I also served prior to that on the Peninsula in Burlingame as an administrator for about 20 years. Probably the oldest person here in the room, but 35, I think, years in education, mostly in administration. So I'm really excited to be here, and hopefully I'll have something to add to the conversation. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Hills, and thank you for your 35 years in education. That's pretty phenomenal. Next up, we have Miss Noelia Corso.
Hi there, nice to be here. My name is Noelia Corso. I am excuse my dog running around in the background. I'm a board trustee with the San Mateo Foster City School District, currently in my 2nd term. I was the president of the board during 2020, so during the pandemic, and I'm really happy to be here. And I'm also a city of San Mateo native. I've lived in Foster City as well. So definitely have a lot of experience in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corso. And with that, now that we've introduced our panelists, we'd like to thank our panelists for graciously joining us, and thank you to the community members for showing up to be a part of this conversation and discussion. Just know that our officers are watching this and listening to this, and like every profession in the country, we wouldn't be being forthcoming, and we'd be remiss if we weren't trying to get better at the job we do as public servants. So now that we've had a chance to meet our panelists, let's move on to a little bit of our discussion. We'll start back with Lieutenant Joyce. And if you could, please elaborate on what Youth Services Unit does, how it works within the police department, and could you enlighten our audience on the many programs that YSU facilitates for students possibly facing safety issues at school?
Sure, of course. Thank you. I'll jump right in. So the Youth Services Unit, it's a complicated, wonderful beast, but you have several of our staff members here on the call, but several are not here. So I want to try and just jump in and explain and give a little bit of background to everybody on the call and listening in. But our overall goal is to support youth and to keep them positively engaged in school, engaged in their families, and engaged in the community, keeping them safe and out of trouble. And I know, as many of you have seen, the pandemic has been really hard for so many, especially our kids, causing disruption in their schools and their social lives and their emotional lives. And I'm really proud of our unit for the work that we've done, kind of thinking outside of the box to continue to provide services and programs to support the overall wellness of our youth and our community. So just to kind of go into our unit is comprised of 4 major areas. And it is the Police Activities League, PAL, which most of you have heard about. We have our Diversion and Prevention Services Program, our Police Explorer Program, and our Youth Services Officer. And we're very unique, and much of our success is due to the relationships and partnerships that we've formed with several organizations that are embedded in our programs and in our staff, actually here at the police department. And it works pretty well when you combine all of these pieces together, working together on the same goal of trying to keep kids safe and engaged. So, Allison, I'm going to jump into a kind of brief overview of the partnerships in each of the categories. I know there's a lot of people on the call, so I want to share the time. But so POW, you heard, is very unique. It's a nonprofit organization with a board of directors that raises money to allow us to provide low to no cost programs to our kids. And it's a marriage between the police department with Sergeant Unga and the Parks and Rec department with program supervisor Alex running the program. So we couldn't do what we do without Parks and Rec. It's amazing expertise in the programming area. Not just within our staff, but PAL partners with organizations outside of the city, such as like Samaritan House, Second Harvest, to bring in food for families. A big partnership we have is with One Life Counseling, that's providing group and individual mental health services to our youth and our families, as well as like the right approach for tutoring. So the list goes on and on with PAL, and I don't want to steal Alex's thunder, but I'll move on to Diversion and Prevention. Again, a very unique program in that we're partnered with, we have a clinical case manager from the YMCA YSB that's embedded here at the police department to provide services on that team, as well as a juvenile probation officer and a family liaison that's connected to a lot of the core services within the county. We utilize Fly, Star Vista, Health Right 360, a lot of community organizations to teach classes, and also for our team members to give referrals for any services that they might need. We also have our Police Explorers program, which I'll just, it's a mentoring and leadership program for 14 to 20-year-old youth that's led by police department staff. And then last but not least, we have our Youth Services Officer, Allison Adl, who is also embedded in all of these programs and also regularly responds to our schools to provide support to students, to staff, to parents, when there is any safety concerns or needs. And lastly, also a little, I think it got mentioned earlier, the newest member of our team is this fluffy little guy named Rookie, and he is a therapy dog. Therapy dog is very new to law enforcement, but it's been around for a long time to help folks deal with trauma and stress and anxiety. And we're really excited to be able to, as a youth services unit, to provide this to our youth and community. And Rookie's going to be actually partnered with Officer Adl, is his handler. So Rookie's away in training, but when he comes back, Allison's going to go and they're going to get more training. And then hopefully by the end of the year, they'll be in the community taking referrals to help lessen trauma of victims or witnesses of crimes. If someone's just having a bad day and needs to play and snuggle, community outreach events, just a lot of stuff. So very exciting. So I'm going to stop talking. That was a lot. We have an amazing team, and obviously we have amazing partners also on this call. So I'm gonna turn it back over to Allison. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Joyce, for that wonderful introduction about how Youth Services Unit is constructed and how it works. You touched on the Explorer program and a couple of other facets of youth services. So I'm going to turn it to Sergeant Unga, and I'm going to ask if you could please tell our audience about the ways the San Mateo Police Department, through our Explorer program and through PAL, helps students facing safety issues.
Yes, of course. Thank you. I have had the privilege of overseeing our Police Explorer program now this past year, and I can't tell you how impressed with this extraordinary group of 14 to 20-year-old youth that we have in the program. We started about a year and a half ago with, I believe, about 3 explorers, and we are currently up to approximately 17 explorers. These young people, like I said, range from the age of 14 to 20 years old, and all of them attend our local high schools right here in our city. I look at these young people as our future leaders in our community. We recently were fortunate to merge our Explorer program with our Police Activities League, and that has been an amazing marriage, as Kimber said. They're able to go out as not only as PAL members, they get all the benefits of being a PAL member, but they also go out and attend all of our PAL events in the community. So for many of you in the community, we've been out at many community events, and our explorers are there with us. They volunteer their time. We have, I believe, over 1,200 hours of volunteer time on the books that these young explorers have done just in this year alone. And if anyone in the community has been out at any of our events over the past year, you'll see our explorers out there delivering food to many of our needy families. They're out throughout the holidays, passing out gifts to some of our families, as well as pretty much any event that PAL does, you will see our explorers out there. And they do wear uniforms similar to the police department uniforms, but they wear like a light blue colored shirt, and they wear our same patches. So there's a lot that these young people gain from being explorers. Personally, I've watched them. There's a lot of discipline that they gain. They learn responsibility, leadership. It builds character for them. But most important, I think it builds confidence. I've seen some young people join the program who are very shy, who are very timid, and going through this program, they find a voice, and I see a lot of growth in a lot of them. In order to apply or qualify to be a part of the Explorer program, they actually go through a pretty extensive background check, similar to what you would do to become a police officer. So it's a good experience for them. And I would say a lot of them have an interest in law enforcement. Whether or not they go on to join law enforcement, time will tell, but it's a great stepping stone and a great leadership tool for them to have in their life in general. A lot of them use it getting into college and as a really good reference. So I'm very proud of the program. I'm excited to see how we grow and how big our Explorer program grows into the future.
Thank you, Sergeant Unga. It was nice to hear how the Explorer program has managed to grow, even with COVID and some restrictions that COVID may have placed on people gathering together. So it's really nice to hear. Next up, we are going to speak with Officer Allison Adl. Allison, if you could please describe a typical day for you. Tell our audience about what are typical calls for service, what are you seeing the most, and in what ways are you engaging to help students who might have an issue with safety or are battling with some type of safety issues in their personal lives?
Sure, thanks, Allison. So typical day for me starts about 7 a.m. when we have our lineup. After lineup ends, I make my rounds throughout all our schools in our community. So it's really just driving by, showing high visibility and a presence, and making sure that our students and community are safe out and about around the school. And then throughout the day, I respond to calls for service at the school. If I'm not at the school actively taking a call for service, I do often receive calls regarding issues or advice that administrators are looking for. So providing advice to them, whether that be regarding a student or a parent has come to them and asked them a question and maybe they're just not sure where to go. So those will come to me. I also work on our Explorer program. So coordinating classes, doing background checks, we're actively recruiting. So Explorers does take up some time. Also training rookie, as Lieutenant Joyce had mentioned. So he obviously is not out and ready to be in the community, but he does come to work with me when he's not in training. And training is a continuous thing. So even though he comes to the office, we're always training with him. And generally that comes about after school time. So I, again, make my rounds throughout the different schools in our community. And again, it's just making sure that students and staff are safe, and again, doing high visibility. And then a lot of my time is also working with everyone in the YSU unit. As Lieutenant Joyce had mentioned, it's a big partnership and we all work together very closely. And as far as typical calls for service, so what I am seeing since students have returned to school in person, I would say the top 3 calls that I get are regarding welfare checks, on-campus theft, and a lot of issues with bullying and social media. So I'm going to combine those 2. Typically, they do go hand in hand. And then as far as providing support to students, so whether it's a student who might just need a little bit of support, I will work with them as well as their wellness counselors. So really just creating a partnership, creating a safety plan for that student. And sometimes if we determine that the student needs a little bit more support, I will often refer them to our prevention program.
Thank you so much for that, Allison. Next up, we're going to speak with Mr. Don Scatena. Mr. Scatena, if you could please tell us what safety issues you currently see affecting students. Are you seeing any issues that are different in this post-COVID kind of world that we're living in? What are you observing that might be some internal and external safety concerns for students on campus?
Sure. We'd be remiss not mentioning mental health concerns first and foremost, being that runs the gamut across all grade levels, all ages. It's the students, but as well as the adults. So mental health concerns is probably chief and most paramount issue that we're seeing in our schools right now. That could be where there's crossover with San Mateo PD is things like 5150s or referrals, assistance in that regard for self-harm situations when it's that level. We are seeing, we have about 75 suspensions thus far this year, which is not a lot. I mean, it's the same number we would have pre-COVID. But of those, half of those are for fights or for acts of violence, so assaults against another student. So that's about 36 of the suspensions are because of fights in or around the school campus. So that's what we're seeing, and a lot of that has to do with, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, it has to do with sort of gang-related issues. And so what I think, if you ask me what was going on pre-COVID and what's going on now, is I think the 18 months of being, having COVID, distance learning, I think exacerbated the gang issues potentially for our teens in the community. We're well prepared to sort of address it, working with police and to sort of get things like diversion and get alternatives in place for students and giving them options, but it also speaks to sort of the socioeconomic situation for a lot of our families and for our students that they're going through. Gang issues is not just about violence. It's usually a reflection of sort of what's going on in society at the time. Finally, and so going back to sort of, mental health, it presents itself like Allison said, Officer Adl, about welfare checks. Well, where welfare checks come about because of mental health or on lack of attendance and inability maybe to get themselves out of bed in the morning, and school phobia and things of that nature, which all are interrelated to mental health. And finally, yes, bullying, cyberbullying. I think that was an issue during distance learning with online bullying and social media use by our students, and it didn't get any better coming out of it, but now we just have to be more prepared because now the students are all together. So those are some of the big safety concerns that we're facing and seeing.
Thank you, Mr. Scatena. For Mr. Stevenson, if you could tell our audience what the day looks like for you when it comes to dealing with safety issues for your students. What are you observing on campus since the children have now physically returned to campus? And are there any new issues you've seen since COVID started?
Sure. I think Mr. Scatena did a good job kind of highlighting what our schools are facing in the San Mateo Union High School District. I'd certainly like to highlight that, you know, we're living through a historical pandemic, and significant inequities exist within the community and how students are coming out of the pandemic. Some students are returning and are thriving. Other students suffered significant hardships, significant trauma. I've heard a couple different people on the panel talk about trauma, and I can tell you it's something we think about every day at Hillsdale, is how to support students who've potentially lost a loved one, dealing with the trauma of parents losing their jobs, the fear of food insecurity, which exists for a lot of our families in San Mateo. And then as a byproduct, significant mental health issues that we're seeing from some of our students. And you know, that's an obvious concern that Mr. Scatena highlighted. I also think, you know, when I think about a day, I think about students transitioning back to in-person learning. You know, the sense of being isolated for 18 months. It's going to take time for students to return to a physical space. I think that social development, especially for our incoming 9th graders, they need 7th and 8th grade to really socially interact with each other, get a sense of what's right, what's wrong in their social interactions as they kind of develop pro-social skills. And then I think for us, you know, dealing with academic learning loss of our students, dealing with attendance issues, students having to work, students having to take care of younger siblings, you know, mental health impacting attendance. So attendance is definitely an issue that we're dealing with. And then, you know, I think technology, we have to think as a community, how do we support students who've really been on technology a lot in the last 18 months? How do they navigate social media? How do they communicate responsibly using technology? So I definitely see some technology issues in the form of bullying and how kids communicate with each other. And then I think the last one, you know, is just students maybe not feeling as connected as they were to each other, not feeling as connected. And that's something that we're trying to tackle every single day, is that students are known, that they're heard, that they're listened to, and that they're supported. And that's all students. So I don't know, Allison, if you wanted us to talk about our response to school safety, some things that we have in place, or is that the next round?
No, that would be great, actually, please.
Okay. So this is my 17th year at Hillsdale. I think we've done a lot of important work in terms of supporting students. And I think school safety is really starts with our multiple tiered system of support, or MTSS. So tier 1 is what all students receive. So we have smaller learning communities at Hillsdale. All students are in a house. They have an advisor. They have a team of teachers that will loop with them in the 9th and 10th grade. And then we'll have a new set of teachers and advisor in the 11th and 12th grade. So again, I think smaller learning communities at Hillsdale really build those relationships with all students to ensure that they know at least one adult well. And I think that is such a proactive way to work with students to ensure school safety. If we know our students, we're listening to our students, we're getting to know our students, we know their challenges, we know their hardships, we know the level of support they need. And then students that need additional support, we really try and support them with our tier 2 work around mental health, around counseling. And then we've really started a program called Empowerment Through Action at Hillsdale. So we support close to 200 first-gen students at Hillsdale. Students are in an affinity group with an adult trained in restorative practices and trauma literacy. Students participate in group once a week. And students then start to get to know that group leader really well, along with the students in their group. And then students in Empowerment Through Action have access to enrichment activities. We've been fortunate to partner with the Police Activities League. Alex, Tracy, Lupe Mejia, Kimber have been super supportive to fund a lot of our enrichment activities for our students. Our ELD soccer team, our hip hop dance, our yoga club, our fashion design club. So making sure that students have an activity that brings them joy and purpose in Empowerment Through Action. And then students also have access to our community resource center, high level leverage tutoring after school in Empowerment Through Action. And then we have a person that works in Empowerment Through Action to build partnerships with local businesses to ensure that students who want a job have access to a job. And we kind of cut through the red tape, support them with the resume, interview skills needed for the job. So all of those empowering actions we think are important in their social and emotional development. So again, I think it's the proactive work that really ensures school safety. And then the last thing I would say is just really being in community with families and students, local businesses, stakeholders. San Mateo PD has been a great partner in our work. Their concept of community policing has been really amazing to watch develop over the years. And we've really benefited from their support and being collaborative and really looking at each case and thinking about what does the student need, what does the community need. So, it's been a collective effort at Hillsdale for sure. And I, can't thank the community enough for their support.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stevenson. Very much appreciated for all that wonderful information. Now we will go to Miss Noelia Corso. What concerns are you hearing from parents as it relates to safety issues for their kids? Earlier this evening, we've had other panelists talk about mental health, gang issues, bullying. What are teachers telling you? What are parents telling you are the safety issues affecting students the most? And how is the district working to address those concerns of students, parents, and teachers?
Thank you for the question. So I would say that what we're hearing from parents is primarily concern about social emotional needs, mental health. There has been minimal concern about like physical safety, but a lot of concern around, mental health and some bullying, definitely. Overall, there are families in our community that really know how to navigate systems and get support and get outside mental health support through their health insurance, etc. And then there are other families that aren't as informed and empowered in terms of asking for resources that are out in the community. Our schools are really a safe place for our students and our families, and so we do a lot of sharing resources, connecting families to resources. We also have so in terms of what teachers are seeing, very similar mental. I also just wanted to clarify that our school district is a pre-K through 8th grade district, and so we see different concerns than, let's say, the high school district because of the age group that we serve. And so we definitely have teachers that are really working collaboratively with our administrators and our counseling teams. We have really taken there have been some calls to the PD in terms of mental health wellness checks, but we actually want to, as a district, provide more training to our school staff and our administrators so that we can handle those concerns with our social workers and therapists on site, so that we really make sure that we have, again, trauma-informed therapists that can handle those needs and then make those referrals to more support if needed. In terms of the district work, we, over the past year and a half, have hired more social workers. We've offered more counseling. Our school district, our middle schools primarily have like 3 to 4 counselors, and each student has an assigned counselor, and so that is their go-to person if they need some help. But we also have many students, and so we do have sites that have, we do have sites that have student support TOSAs, and TOSA is a teacher on special assignment. So those TOSAs are working on implementing social emotional curriculum in our schools, in our middle schools, and also supporting restorative practices within our school sites. Let's see, what else? In terms of our board and what our board is doing around these issues and these needs that our students in our community have, in February of last year, we passed a resolution that was really about addressing the need for more social service, more of a focus on social services and less on policing. We have implemented some of the pieces that were in that resolution, and we are actually going to be discussing that resolution again this Thursday at our board meeting. So I invite everyone to take a look. We also record our meetings, and that will be available. We'll do a deep dive into discipline and what we want our district to focus on in terms of supporting the social emotional well-being of our students and making sure that we have all of those needs met. I also, and then I'll end my comments, I also just want to give a plug to our sanctuary task force, who has done a lot of work around meeting the needs of our students on an ongoing basis, but definitely more during the pandemic. We actually have an AAPI subcommittee in our sanctuary task force that is partnering now with PAL to potentially bring rugby to one of our middle schools where there's a need for that, for students to have, oh, sorry about my dog, for students to have, that kind of extracurricular activity that they really feel connected to and really speaks to their culture. So we'll see how that goes, but those are some of the things that we are doing.
It's wonderful to hear all the great things that you are doing district wide. It's important. I may have saved the best for last. Mr. Hills, with all of your experience and all of your time, I almost feel like I don't need to ask you a specific question. I'm just going to let you talk and discuss safety issues that you've seen and anything you want our audience to know right now.
Well, thank you, Allison. I'm flattered. Only because I'm old, right? But I have to say, my colleagues have really highlighted eloquently the things that are going on. And Hillsdale High School, it sounds like a place I certainly want to be. And I'm very impressed by the programs I'm hearing about. And Noelia addressed our district's vision and mission with students and the work that we do to take care of kids, right? It's all about well-being. And I think it goes without saying that, we care deeply about the well-being of everybody, of the employees, the parents in the community, and the students. People's worlds have been really small, right? The last 18, 19, 20 months. They've gradually grown bigger with coming back to school on site. We recognize that students, young and older, don't remember how to navigate that world. So, we're really trying to give them the tools they need to be their very best. And it's okay that they're not, right? So we're acknowledging that it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of effort. The multi-tiered system approach, as Brett spoke about, is really important for all of the educators to pull together and work with our young people. And really, when students find themselves in a situation where they've made, a decision to do something that probably wasn't the best for them, it's about trying to get to the root cause, right? Figuring out why they did what they did. What are the ramifications? What can we do to help repair that, whatever it is that they've done? I don't have any great stories, nor would I share any necessarily, but I think each month we're going to find new things come up. We just, in our district, just had a autumn or fall break. And so we're coming back after a week off. I think right before the break, people were feeling very ready for that. A nice break happened. We're back. We're moving forward. We've almost finished a quarter of the school year. Somebody reminded me of that today, which feels pretty amazing that we've already reached that milestone. With the vaccines out, people are doing the right thing for themselves and their families. hopefully we can get the younger students vaccinated. But it's a collective effort. We want to work together with all of our partners, of course, and every day brings a new opportunity. The one thing that I think, from my perspective, new to this position, that I think kids need more tools around is really social media. I'm hearing from parents and from administrators in kind of almost a crisis way around kids, young people not understanding the ramifications of social media. They get on their phone, they detect something, they send pictures, they do things, or they're engaging people they don't know. They've spent all this time at home on their computer previous to being in school. Now they're back at school. They're not necessarily learning through their computer, but they're remaining engaged in that tool. And I don't think many of them have the best way to get through that and how to deal with it as a young person. So I'm curious if there's other folks on the panel that have some ideas about that. But I'd say that's the thing that's bubbled up for me in this role quite a bit in the last month. So, yeah.
Thank you for that, Mr. Hills. Ms. Corso, did you want to chime in right now?
Yes, so I actually, I went to I think it was the California Latino School Boards Association like two years ago. And there is a nonprofit that does work around digital citizenship. And so I think we just need to reconnect with them. So I'm happy to touch base on that one and to share that info with anyone once I find that email that's somewhere in my inbox.
Yeah, Jamie Nunez from commonsense.org he's done county trainings and can be a great resource. He'll take you through the process to find your own solutions and can do some trainings and evaluate things like acceptable use policies and things of that nature. In our district, we do have a lot of things when there is an issue and responding, so we don't have to suspend and kick students out of school and things of that nature. So we do have a lot of course content we're willing to share, and we take students through 4 sessions as an alternative to suspension for things like any harassment or bullying that might happen on a social media platform.
Thanks for the info. We'll definitely use that.
Thank you both for that. That was really good. That way we were able to draft off Mr. Hill's point and add some resource and information out there for our audience as well. Our previous 8 panelists basically were discussing issues pertaining to students in an on-campus type environment and on-campus experience. Our next panelist has a different perspective. Mr. Alex Greer deals with students, just not on a campus kind of capacity. So it's kind of a little bit of shift in what we're asking Mr. Greer and his experience and what he sees. So if you could answer for us, since many of our COVID-19 restrictions are beginning to lift, and now for the first time in a long time, young people are starting to gather together for activities and be around one another on a regular and frequent basis. Could you tell us about the many different ways PAL helps students spend their time away from school in a safe environment?
Yeah, thank you, Allison, for the question. So a new initiative that we somewhat launched this school year in a reaction, to COVID, but also as Brett had mentioned earlier, somewhat of an expansion on the Empowerment Through Action program that was started at Hillsdale High School about 2 years ago. We felt that coming out of COVID, that type of programming that kind of gives students that inner purpose or belonging, or as Brett said, it's something that makes them happy. We felt that was more prevalent and more necessary than ever. And as Dawn mentioned too, the whole mental health, it doesn't discriminate against age. Just because you're in high school or first grade, you are dealing with mental health issues, and especially coming out of the pandemic and distant learning and the learning loss. And so what PAL, in partnership with all of our partners, primarily the school district, both school districts, we launched a PAL after school enrichment program, which is aiming to increase support, whether it's academic, emotional, mental, any type of support that any of these kids may need, mentoring, obviously. And so what we are basically developing is programming on campus for these students to have access to. We wanted to eliminate hurdles as far as transportation or just different things that we have seen in the kind of the Parks and Rec world, as far as people aren't able to get to A because they don't have transportation. So what we decided to do in partnership with the school district is to just have these on-campus after-school enrichment programs that range from mental health counseling, group counseling, group tutoring provided by professional counselors and tutors. We have yoga classes, dance classes, and drop-in sports primarily that we are offering to 1st through 8th grade, and then as well as continuing to support the ETA program at Hillsdale, as well as other schools, other high schools in San Mateo that are also a part of what Brett had mentioned, the ELD soccer program, as well as the basketball program that'll be getting going next year. So really what we're looking to do is close the opportunity gap for kids and their families, and have that develop that inner resiliency and sense of belonging to the community, and just give them a safe place to learn and develop relationships and build relationships, especially coming out of the pandemic where they were isolated for so long and they just need that interaction again. I think that's a really important thing. We all do as a team. I'm sure think that that's one of the most important things to battle or combat that mental health is just having social interactions with kids your own age, doing something fun, whether it's sports, dance, yoga, any type of enrichment type of activity. It all serves a purpose in combating what they've been going through the last 18 months. And another unique way of this partnership is nobody, in my opinion, in our opinion, as a PAL team, nobody really knows the kids more than the teachers and the administration, admin staff who are working at the schools every single day, interacting with these kids every single day. So we really trust them and rely on them to refer us the appropriate kids for these programs. And so that's a really beneficial thing about this program is that there's that open line of communication. I've learned a lot of names and faces over the last 2 months, just speaking to principals and admin staff and wellness counselors. And I think the relationship has already been great in previous years, and now it's only just getting bigger and the reach is getting bigger. There's more schools that we haven't worked with in the past that we're working with now. And it's just been a really great partnership with both school districts to continue to support our students. And especially after COVID, disrupted the school year, it was difficult for families. Again, children didn't have those social interactions. Parents were struggling to work with their children at home with distance learning, especially with language barriers that they had to deal with. And so there was a big learning loss. And so the tutoring that we're offering is supporting that. And then of course, the mental health counseling is supporting any type of mental trauma that they may have experienced, whether it was from just, not just being at home alone, or was it maybe a death of a family member, or maybe they're newcomers into the country and they're dealing with trauma from something that happened in their previous country. So all of those things, we're working to support them, improve academic outcomes, foster friendships, and just again, sense of belonging to the community and a sense of just knowing, I think Brett touched on it, beautifully about the tiers and different learning and the smaller learning environments and having an adult role model. And so, whether a tutor or a counselor or a yoga instructor or a hip hop instructor or a teacher volunteer or one of my PAL program staff, having those adult role models in their lives is a very important thing as well to combat everything that we're discussing here. So it's been a great program, and it's only going to continue to grow and reach out to more and more schools and more students. And and everyone here on this panel obviously cares a lot, and I think this is the right group of people to continue this fight.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you for highlighting the many wonderful attributes that PAL offers students in an off-campus variety. It's great. Before we open up the Q&A section of this wonderful discussion, I just want to remind our attendees that if you are watching and you are unable to put a question through Zoom Q&A function, feel free to send an email to pdpio@cityofsanmateo.org. That is one way you can get your question across to us. We'll be monitoring email. Additionally, if there is something from our panelists right now, is there something that you feel you would like to have covered before we go to Q&A? Are there any points anybody would like to make that maybe they forgot to make initially or wanted to add at this time?
Yeah, I wanted to add a little something. Just when I first came in to this district in the San Mateo some 15 years ago, we were talking about a youth corrections department up on Tower Road that was near capacity with hundreds and hundreds of students up there incarcerated. We were talking about so many students on probation, and a lot has changed. I think there's only there's a new, a wonderful building up there, but it's nearly empty. And that's because of a lot of the work that, San Mateo PD, the school districts have done to stop that sort of prison, school to prison pipeline from becoming a reality. And a lot of the efforts that we've done has sort of proven that, there's only a handful of students from our community incarcerated right now. And so I just wanted to point that out. And it's because a lot of the interventions, diversion, PAL, things of that nature that have gone a long way to sort of, not incarcerating youth, doing things of that nature. And so I think it just want to give a little perspective with those 15 years.
Mr. Scatena, if you turn off your video, we might be able to hear you a little bit better. You're cutting in and out. If you're able to hear me. I think we might have lost him for a second there. Yeah, he's a little bit present. Mr. Stevenson,
in this area.
To your point.
Yeah, just before the Q&A, I think it was so important to hear from the panelists tonight talk about trauma literacy. If I think about my career in education, what I wish I would have had earlier was knowledge around trauma, the impact of trauma on so many of our young people and so many of our families. I think it completely changes the lens of how we view a student who is dysregulated during the school day and has a behavior issue. Really thinking about, how do we de-escalate? How do we get students back into a resilience zone? How do we create brave spaces for students on our campuses where they really feel known and cared about? But I think when you start to understand trauma and you see kids that are triggered, you start to recognize stress patterns and survival patterns that play out. And as the adult, once we have that trauma literacy, we can think about ways to support students in grounding practices, somatic practices. But I think the more we develop our adults to all have a common language around trauma, I think it's a game changer for sure, not just in schools, but in the community as well.
Absolutely. I'll just piggyback off of that and to Don's point earlier as well. So my full-time job is actually, I'm a social worker for a nonprofit, and my professional career began as a residential counselor in a group home in San Francisco. And so I've worked with foster youth in the past, and a lot of the training that I got when I began that part of my career was really around attachment theory, trauma-informed practices, what that looks like. And that is definitely, just like essential to really meeting students where they are and helping them understand that, these behaviors that can be really problematic come from a place of anxiety, of trauma, of disassociation. And so, Brett really talked about, how to ground students and how to understand the root causes. And that is absolutely, again, essential. To Don's point about the history of our community and how, 10, 15 years ago, we had a juvenile hall that was pretty packed. As someone that grew up in North Central San Mateo, that really was my lived experience growing up. I myself, as a young person, was on informal probation. And, more than anything, I remember that as a positive experience because it gave me like a mentor. Like, in a weird way, my probation officer was my mentor. But I also think that, that could have been, maybe I needed just a mentor in general, right, in the community. That and if that need was met proactively, I wouldn't have been on probation in the first place, right? So that shift really is clear in terms of how many young people we see up at our juvenile hall now. I was at a Board of Supervisors meeting recently, and they're discussing they created a committee to address and to discuss and to look into the future of that facility. And I personally will just make a plug for, maybe that can be like a mental health facility where we can, proactively provide services to young people that have stressors and just like meet a need that has grown, where, instead of having a facility where young people are incarcerated, when we know that that need has shifted and really was misguided, right? Like, there was a very clear connection between schools and discipline and policing that led to having a lot of young people, incarcerated and not just as youth, but also as adults. And so this is not exactly on topic, but also I think important, something I just want to lift up in this space is that, we have a lot of families in our community that, that might not, that are potentially undocumented and are really concerned about interactions with police because they fear, they're worried about deportations. And as a former community organizer that really worked on immigrant rights, that is an issue that really is not good for public safety, right? Like, having community members that are concerned about making reports or asking for support because our county is actually still, our county sheriff's office still collaborates with ICE to this day. That's a valid concern that I think as a community, we all need to take a look at and talk about a little bit, because, there are a lot of positive programs in the community, and sometimes there are barriers to people accessing those programs because of things like concerns around deportations or other concerns, right? There are people in our community that, maybe older folks that had maybe not so positive experiences with PD and that, those experiences are, potentially traumatic or still linger on, like the impacts of those experiences. And so, again, a little bit off topic, but I also think part of the conversation, because, we don't just serve students, we serve a community that, is made up of families of all ages and all different kinds of experiences. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Ms. Corso. Thank you for your perspective on things.
Can I just say one more thing? I just want to,
Of course.
I want to thank Noelia for bringing that up, because that is, I don't know if it came across in this presentation. It's a short amount of time, but we agree with you. We're trying to break down those barriers too. which is why we're trying to think outside of the box. We don't want this uniform to scare people away, really. We really want to provide services to our youth, to our families, and to our community. So we're open to suggestions. We can always do things better, and we're happy. I want to thank everyone that's on this call for the partnership, because that's going to make us better and help us serve better. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Joyce, for that. That's greatly appreciated. Do any other panelists have anything that they would like to add before we open it up for Q&A?
Allison, if I may just say a few words, I just want to say also thank you, Noelia, for that comment. As Lieutenant Kimber Joyce said, we try every day, especially through PAL and through youth services, to humanize the badge. We understand and we realize that a lot of times people see this uniform first and foremost. But I know that through a lot of PAL programs that we do and a lot of community events that we do, we really try to get out there and identify with our local communities and different cultures in our community. And if there's ever a way that we can do something different or do something better, we're always open and willing to hear that. By no means do we think we know everything when it comes to our community, but I do feel that we are definitely an organization that does want to serve the community that we serve, that's here in San Mateo. And then the only other thing I wanted to add too is I've had the honor of working with these two school districts for a very large part of my career. And I can say one thing that I've always admired is the collaboration that the San Mateo Police Department has had from both the high school district as well as the San Mateo Foster City School District. And at the end of the day, we come from different organizations, but I think we all have the young people in this community and we worry and we care about all of them. And I'm just glad to see that we're all here today, and I appreciate all of you on the panel tonight.
Thank you, Sergeant Unga, for that. Very much appreciated. At this time, since we're a little bit past the hour, we're going to open it up to Q&A from our audience, reminding everyone who's on the call and watching on YouTube that they can send questions either by email, pd@pio@cityofsanmateo.org, or actually through the Zoom feature Q&A. You can stay anonymous, and we encourage all to ask anything that they would like. I do have one question for Officer Adl, and it is, how much food does Rookie eat every day, and how big will he get?
So he's definitely a growing boy. So I feel like he's always eating whatever he can also kind of scrounge up. So he's actually a golden doodle. So he is a medium size and expected to be somewhere between 50 and 55 pounds.
Thank you, Officer Adl. It's appreciated. A question that came in for our PAL program supervisor, Mr. Greer, is, could you elaborate on, quote unquote, the cool stuff PAL kids get to do?
Sure. So we have a lot of different types of programming. Some of our programming is referral based, which is our intervention prevention style programming, which I spoke about. That's kind of the programs that we rely on, officers or community members or our staff, as well as the partners like the school district and One Life, to refer kids who they feel are in need of some more support, whether it's enrichment programs or academic or what have you. On the other side of that, we also have a lot of programming for our general membership, which is open to anybody that becomes a PAL member. And not obviously, but PAL membership is free. And those programs, once you become a PAL member, which everyone's invited to do, all youth are, those programs are widely available to anybody who may be interested. And those range from martial arts, hockey, dance and yoga and music. So we have a ukulele class. What else do we have? We have a musical theater class. So we like to touch on a wide variety of different style of classes, not only to just have kids find what they enjoy, but also just to try something new. And our hope is that they when they find something like a martial arts class, that they stick with it, and it kind of develops that determination and that, sense of wanting to improve and get better. And so same with hockey or Junior Giants, which is our baseball program that we run during the summer. And then on top of that, we also would do, prior to COVID, a lot of really fun field trips that kids normally wouldn't have the opportunity or the financial means to do. Amusement parks, going to the snow, going backpacking, going whitewater rafting, going horseback riding. There's an almost endless amount of field trips that we would also offer to all of our PAL members that they may not be able to have the opportunity to do. And we're looking forward next summer to be able to offer those types of programs again. But what we're currently offering, like I said, is a lot of those enrichment style activities. And then on top of that, we have a ton of our, cultural events that we do throughout the year, as well as our family community events. This Friday, we actually have a Halloween family night, which is going to be held at the King Center in the north central part of the San Mateo. And that's kind of one of our home bases over at the King Center. We do a lot of programming outside of that. And that's another aspect of the wonderful partnership that we have with Parks and Rec is we are able to, supply programming directly into the community, and that allows for a lot of different families to come in. And so they kind of come into the door looking for a Parks and Rec class, and then they get introduced that way. And this kind of touches on what Noelia was speaking about, kind of building that bond and breaking down that barrier. And that's another wonderful part of the partnership that we have with Parks and Rec is, it's a great way to introduce PAL to those families who may have already, may attend King Center, or they may attend Beresford Recreation Center. And then when PAL is there offering somewhat the same style of programming, it allows them to kind of break down that barrier and realize that PAL, although we are associated and affiliated with the police department, we are really just about, enriching the youth and then as well as the family. So back to your original question, all the cool stuff is it varies from field trips to classes to events. And it is very cool.
Thanks, Alex. You did a wonderful job telling our audience the wonderful, cool things PAL has to offer. Right now, we're going to come to the close probably of the Q&A session. We're still looking to see if anybody has any more questions. pd@pio@cityofsanmateo.org, or you feel free to drop a question in the Q&A section for Zoom. I have one final question, and I hate to do this to my fellow officers, but I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Our question as it relates to the big holiday at the end of this month. Lieutenant Joyce, Officer Allison Adl, and Sergeant Unga, do you have any Halloween safety tips for our young people?
I'm going to go first so I can get some easy answers out there. Wear something bright. I mean, that's obvious. A parent would say that, but those little glow-in-the-dark sticks, the kids think they're cool. Throw them all over their costume. It looks cool, and the cars can see them. And then also just to stay with their group that they're going trick-or-treating if they feel safe to go trick-or-treating this year. I know it's a little bit more open than it was last year, but again, just to be aware of the traffic and stay with the folks that you know. That's my tip.
Thank you for that, LT. Sergeant Unga, do you have anything to add?
As a mom of 4, I think Lieutenant Joyce took all of my tips, but I think traffic for sure. I feel like kids just start in front of the street if they're out trick-or-treating. So that's a big one for sure. Obviously, if they can go with their parents, that would be amazing. But I do know nowadays a lot of kids will go in groups. So staying with a group, making sure that they have some form of communication, whether it's a cell phone to call home if they need to, but just being aware of where they're at, and be safe and have fun.
Thanks for that, Sergeant Unga. And we'll end with Officer Adl.
I think they took all mine, so I'm just going to keep mine fun and lighthearted, and don't eat too much candy. You don't want a tummy ache.
Thank you for that, Officer Adl. That is true. And never eat treats that aren't sealed very well. That's always a good one too. All right. With that, we will bring our Q&A section to a close. Thank you for the answers. Our audience greatly appreciated their questions being answered. But before we conclude tonight's discussion, I'm going to ask all of our panelists for some closing remarks. And with that, we will start with Mr. Hills.
Thank you. Well, I just want to thank everybody for their hard work and their energy and their good spirit for being here tonight and the hard work that you do. It's really an honor. I know it sounds cliche, but it is an honor to be in the role that I'm in, and I'm learning new things every day. But the one thing I'm very sure about is that collectively, we're all in this together, and we're going to do what we can to help young people and families and community to thrive, because really that's what we all want, is happiness and be well. So whatever we can do to support, just reach out to us and let us know. So thank you for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Hills. And we'll move to Ms. Corso.
I think Dennis said it pretty perfectly, but again, thank you for the invite to this panel conversation. Always happy to continue any conversation offline. Yeah, we all definitely care about this community, and we want to see everyone have their needs met and be safe and be healthy and resilient and thriving. So again, thank you for the invite.
Thank you, Ms. Corso. Mr. Scatena.
I just want to say I appreciate the invitation and the continued work we do with San Mateo Police Department and San Mateo Union High School District. The connection and communication is fantastic, and looking forward to continuing to work closely.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Alex Greer.
Just to repeat, very, very happy to be here. I feel like I took something away from everybody, and I feel even more motivated to really serve this community. And I know a lot of you are from here. I don't live in San Mateo, but I feel like it is my community because I've worked here for over 5 years, and I'm blessed, and I'm very proud of the work that we all continue to do. So again, thank you.
Thanks again, Alex. Greatly appreciated. Officer Allison Adl.
Just to echo everyone's remarks, just feeling extremely lucky and blessed to work in such a community where, you know, at the end of the day, I think we all have the common goal, which is to help the city of San Mateo and all of its residents.
Thank you, Allison. Mr. Brett Stevenson.
Just want to thank San Mateo PD for this town hall, and I think maybe just a reminder of how interconnected we all are in this community. And I think for all of us just to remember, you know, when you think of schools and you think of school safety, so much starts with our teachers and our classified staff who are with students the majority of the school day. We are blessed to have people that have given their lives and careers to be educators. So really thankful for our teachers, but also just, you know, if you know the folks at San Mateo PD, and I have for a long time, the leadership of Tracy Unga and Kimber Joyce and Lupe Mejia, it's a special group to work with. They're holding a vision for our community, and especially our young people. And I just want to give my appreciation to them as well.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Sergeant Tracy Unga.
Just very humbled to do this work. I have gravitated toward working with youth, and I have to say I have a passion and I love to do it. So I'm blessed to be able to work in a capacity that I love. Like everyone said, kudos to everyone on this call tonight. You know, as we emerge from this horrible global pandemic, we're better together. And so I'm glad that we came to the table. I hope that we continue to come to the table and have these conversations, whether sometimes they're hard conversations, but they're conversations that need to be So kudos to all of you, and have a good night.
Thanks, Sergeant Unga. Now we'll go to Lieutenant Kimber Joyce.
Thank you. I don't know about everybody, but I'm feeling energized. Like it's nice to hear all the things that everyone on this panel had to say. I'm excited to hear more from the community after hearing this talk, but really we have more work to do, and we have some great partners here in this community, and we're going to be looking to you guys and to others to help us do a better job to make sure we are serving our youth and our families the best that we can. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lieutenant Joyce. And to close out our panelists and for closing remarks, Chief Ed Barberini.
Wow, you surprised me. I didn't know you were coming back to me, but I first want to express my gratitude, not only for the people for participating on this panel, but for what you do every day. I mean, I think it's fair to say that the fields that the folks on this panel work in are some of the most difficult fields that you will find. We are constantly working through some very, very challenging and difficult problems, and I could not be more grateful for the work that all of you do. I think that I learned a heck of a lot tonight. I'm enthused and energized like everyone else. I think Kimber put it best that we're here to get better, and I know from a law enforcement perspective, we know that there's no end game, there's no finish line. There'll always be room to improve, and that's what we're looking to do. But when we say we're looking to get better, we're looking to improve not only as a police department, but as a city and as a community. And we need to see the bigger picture and not focus on what happens within our four walls. And conversations like this, I think, promote that. So thanks for taking the time tonight, but more importantly, thanks for what you do every day. I really appreciate it. And I know that for the folks who tuned in tonight to watch, and those who are going to watch this, as later on, I think that if they're not impressed, at the very least, of the commitment and dedication of the folks on this call, then they're really not getting it. So thank you very much. I couldn't be more grateful for all of you, and I'm really looking forward to what we can do together moving forward. So thanks.
Thanks, Chief. And thank you for joining us for episode 5 of Real Talk San Mateo. We've had some insightful discussions this year, and we hope that in the future we'll continue to have more. We have a lot of exciting topics that we can discuss in the future. Be sure to follow us on our emergency alert platforms like Nixle and Nextdoor, our social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And also please, please, please go to our website at sanmatopolice.org and scroll through our police accountability page for more information about our police department and what our department is doing to make you safer. Thank you, good night, and have a wonderful evening.